this guy, this president, his whole Jeffrey Epstein problem just won't go away. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. And you can probably see it all over his face whenever he's asked about it.
The family of Virginia Giuffre released a statement overnight in response to some of the comments that you made this week. You said that Jeffrey Epstein stole people from Mar-A-Lago. At the time, did you know why he was taking those young women, including Virginia?
No, I didn't know. I mean, I would figure it was ABC fake news that would ask that question, one of the worst. But no, I don't know really why. But I said, if he's taking anybody from Mar-A-Lago, he's hiring or whatever he's doing. I didn't like it, and we threw him out. We said we don't want him, at the place. This is a story that's been known for many years, as you know. But it's I didn't like it that he was doing that.
Whenever his, feathers get ruffled like that by a simple, direct question, it's based off of the thing that he said on Air Force One, talking about how Jeffrey Epstein stole Virginia Giuffre from him. So as he talked about it and gets asked about it, for some reason, Rachel Scott, I believe it was, from ABC News, is suddenly the worst. And I can tell it's from ABC News. You must be the worst ever. Why you got to bristle over somebody asking a question of what it is that you brought up? The guilt is written all over his face every time he mentions something about it. It's when he gets mad about it even further and distracts from the actual problem. So why can't you answer the question? Her family sees her still as a human, and they didn't like that all that much.
She wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon at his property, at President Trump's property. And I think it's very important that we don't treat it like stolen. Seems very impersonal. It feels very much like an object, and these survivors are not objects. Women are not objects. What goes through my mind is that it's time to protect survivors, and it's time to protect the young women and our future generation of young women. So no, she wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon, and it certainly makes you kind of ask the question, how much he knew during that time, right? Even a couple of years later, even after he, I believe he had stated something along the lines of cutting off communication or kicking him out. He described Jeffrey Epstein as somebody who really enjoyed being around young women. And so she was preyed upon. She wasn't stolen. That's a predator that came and took her.
There's real life and there's real people behind this story. So as Trump continues to make this purely political and have everything to do with him trying to protect himself from this, which, that's what people who are covering things up will do. When you actually speak to folks' families who don't want to be on TV having to cry over their deceased family member based off of what it is that these guys did to her, but they have to come forward and talk about it because that asshat keeps talking about her as some piece of property, even in this moment when he's trying to cover his own ass over it. I don't think they have the desire to be there and talk about this on CNN. But now they have to because he's now damaging her name further. By the way, you know how Republicans were, as they demonized immigrants and they wanted to talk about how there are rapists, murderers, and killers. And there's this anger and vehement the types of rhetoric that they use to talk about them just to make sure enough people are afraid of them so that they'll vote them in to then have this mass deportation policy and destroy so many people's lives. As they pulled that off, they had these stories of women being killed by murderers that came into the country. And then they'll have other stories of young girls being assaulted by folks who came in the country. And they said, these are the reasons why we have to get rid of anyone that I deem illegal. But for some reason, we know Jeffrey Epstein did all those things and much worse in an organized crime ring based off of it with the help of rich people and servicing rich people in his child sex trafficking ring. When they do that, there's no anger about them. It's just, he stole her from me and I didn't like that. Why didn't he tout out the family members the way that these Republicans tout family members and introduce bills based off of trying to demonize migrants over it? Why is it these guys haven't been behind him at the RNC? They're families of the victims, and there's plenty of families of victims. I'm gonna give them a little bit more time to talk about what is it they're frustrated by.
I imagine you were probably quite surprised when the Justice Department sent their number 2 in charge to go and sit down with Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, we were very surprised. I think, she was preyed upon by Ghislaine Maxwell as well as many other predators out there, but she was preyed upon at Mar-A-Lago. And we were very shocked and very surprised that they were giving her a voice and giving her a platform to essentially possibly make a deal. And reality to that is that there's so many survivors still out there that are affected by that, including my sister, who's not here to speak for herself. And I think it's important that we stand beside them, that we stand in front of you and in front of everyone out there with a sign of strength on my sister's behalf, because she's not here to do that herself. But we stand with survivors here, and I want to make it clear that, she does not get the opportunity to get out. She deserves to rot in prison where she belongs because of what she's done to my sister and so many other women. And it's absolutely a pure sense of evil.
They haven't had these guys, her family, at any events to talk about how devastating this problem is. They campaigned on ending child sex trafficking of all these nefarious folks are doing in the country. And then when you have a direct example, probably the biggest one we've seen, where we can see exactly how these things work and who potentially the clients of these folks are, who enable these things to keep happening. How many other child sex rings are happening on a much smaller level in the country, but haven't spoken to her family. Instead, talk about how he has the right to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. For what? For giving more information on information that was already sifted through and created and investigated by previous FBIs, and that they said now doesn't exist? They need Ghislaine Maxwell, and he has the right to pardon her. What a slap in the face. Imagine a president on this same line of them talking about people that were killed by migrants, then the president coming forward and saying, I'm looking to actually pardon these migrants that were convicted of murder and child sex trafficking, just in case they have more things they need to tell me. We have to think about this outside the lens of the bullshit that they keep telling us. But you know what? Michael Wolff, who gets interviews with many of these folks and has talked to many of these people around Ghislaine Maxwell and the Epstein things and Donald Trump and his background behind him, he had a very, this is a revealing moment where he talked about potentially the reasons why they talked to Ghislaine Maxwell.
In the White House, they believe that the story in the Wall Street Journal about the birthday greeting that Donald Trump, the salacious birthday greeting that Donald Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein in 2003 on the occasion of his 50th birthday, was a leak from the Maxwell family. And in the White House, they regarded this as, quote, a shot across the bow. So a threat, if that Ghislaine had damaging material on Donald Trump. So Donald Trump's lawyer, who, as it happens, is also the number 2 in the United States Justice Department, but principally is Donald Trump's own lawyer, went down, and I expect to try to figure out exactly what Ghislaine Maxwell has, and then they would figure out how they might have to handle that.
So that Wall Street Journal article about the birthday book, where Donald Trump drew the picture outline of a woman in her breasts and then scribbled his name as her pubic hair. When he got upset and said he's going to sue the Wall Street Journal over that whole story, and then days later, maybe a week later, sent his personal attorney, who's now the deputy at the Department of Justice, to secretly talk to Ghislaine Maxwell. As Michael Wolff pointed out there, that story being leaked to the Wall Street Journal was potentially a shot across the bow, as a warning shot to Donald Trump, potentially from Maxwell's family, saying, we have dirt on you. So they had to rush secretly and hurriedly to go talk to her, to be like, what do you got, Ghislaine? What do you got? And what do we have that you need? We can only speculate because the most transparent administration in history isn't being very transparent about what it is they're doing with this cover up. So, as they went there to try and adjudicate this and figure it out and find some way to get rid of this, Ghislaine Maxwell was also, I think, still being subpoenaed by Congress. And then once they subpoenaed her, she had this laundry list of demands to make sure that if you're gonna subpoena me to talk, I need to be exonerated of everything. I need to be released from prison. I need to have the interview not inside the jail cell. She had like a whole list of things as if she should be in this place of control because she feels she is now, along with the attorney who's best friends with Donald Trump's attorney, who went there to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell and her attorney. She's like, well, if Congress wants to talk to me, they're going to have to provide me with some of the protections that Donald Trump's personal attorney, who's now works for the Justice Department, promised me as well. She's got the cards in her hand. She's like, well, I got information. Who wants it? Who's going to give me what I want from my information about this guy who's hell bent on covering this up?